Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into episode 394 of the Tech Sideline podcast. UVA week is finally upon us as the Hokies will play host to the Cavaliers in front of a packed Lane Stadium for the first time since 2018. We got the whole football crew on set to break it down, so let's get it rolling. Episode 394 of the Tech Sideline podcast starts right now. We're recording on Wednesday, November 27th, 2024 from our high-tech studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. And head over to techsideline.com to check out our extensive editorial content. Subscriptions are just $12 a month for loads of content. And for Virginia Tech students, your subscription is free. Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. The Tech Sideline podcast is also brought to you by the Hokie Way. The Hokie Way thanks Virginia Tech fans for their support of our mission to leverage student-athletes' name, image, and likeness in support of charitable organizations. To learn more about us and the organization we support, visit thehokieway.org to learn more. I'm your host, Carter Hill, filling in for Giovanni Heater. To my right is our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Across the way is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. In the fourth chair is our founder and general manager, Will Stewart. Yes, there you are, Will. In the fourth chair. And behind the scenes is our director of media, Nick Brown. He is producing. Well, guys, it is finally UVA week in Blacksburg. Regardless of how both teams' seasons have gone, there always is something special about this week.
Yeah. Is it? I mean,
we try and build it up.
Yeah,
well,
you try to. It's kind of odd. I mean, I grew up in an era. Like when I first started watching Virginia Tech football was the early to mid 90s, and both these teams were loaded. I mean, you go back from 1993 to 1998 and watch those games and see how many future NFL players were on the roster of those teams. I mean, the talent level was pretty incredible for both teams back then. And that was back when UVA was good, and they were going head to head with. I remember in 1995, they beat Florida State. They lost to Michigan and Texas, like on last-second field goals. And then Virginia Tech won the Sugar Bowl that year. And, I mean, it was just high-level football.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it still means a lot. But at the same time, it's not the same. I'm sorry to burst anybody.
Are you suggesting that this primetime matchup?
It just doesn't excite
like the
me
ACC
anymore.
never tried to promote this as like Watson, Calandria.
I know.
One team's going to the Fenway Bowl, the other's staying home. Like this is not. It's tough to promote that. Like this is the capper on the ACC's night of football. Is this 8 p.m. game? It's a little bit of a downer at the end. Like this game is so much fun with their stakes.
Yeah.
And like even I didn't cover it in the 90s, obviously, and then those were like national stuff was at stake there. But there've been a couple times where like the Coastal Division was on the line. It's like something to play for. Now it's like one's going to a bowl game at a baseball stadium probably, and the other one's not. Like this just. It's not what it has been.
Andy, when did you cover UVA? From when to when?
2004 to the start of 08.
So you've only seen one UVA win over Virginia Tech.
Yeah, it was the 2019, because I was when was the previous one? It was 2003. Yep, so I came in right after that.
Okay, so it's the Andy Bitter curse for UVA.
Maybe. Some people call it the Andy Bitter curse for Virginia Tech since I got on the beat at the end of 2011.
Fair.
And the program has been pretty bad.
We got our press pass for the first time in 2012.
Okay, so I can't be completely blamed. All right.
Exactly. It is not an Andy Bitter problem. That's breaking news over here on this Wednesday morning. So, Andy, I know we had the press conference yesterday. Brent Pry talked about the injuries for Virginia Tech amongst some other topics. And I know it's a shocker, but Colin Schlee and Kyron Drones are both questionable questionable for this weekend. So what are some updates on the injury front for the Hokies?
Yeah, I mean, they're preparing 4 quarterbacks to try to play, and 2 on the field in Pop Watson and Davy Belfour, and then 2 in the training room, and Kyron Drones and Colin Schlee. And I don't honestly think either one of those guys are going to play. They're not even out there at practice at this stage of the week. I mean, we saw Kyron on the sideline with a knee brace on, moving around pretty slowly, and then the hits that Schlee has taken. I don't know if it's a concussion or not. Probably didn't really. He sort of dodged that one when I asked that the other day. So he didn't say yes or no on whether that's the case. But they're in the training room right now. If you're in the training room and the other guy's getting all the reps on the practice field, I think it's probably a good sign that guy is going to start, the guy getting the reps. So I would imagine it's Pop Watson on Saturday. That would be my best guess. And, he didn't look terrible against Duke in relief. You give him a full week to game plan. Maybe he's a little bit more comfortable, shifting protections or understanding when to get rid of the ball. I think that was real problematic with the 7 sacks that they allowed in that game. But, I think this is the reason you recruit quarterbacks like this, and you try to develop them over time, and not just go get a portal guy every time is you get to your next guy. And like I've said a lot of times, you get to your 3rd quarterback with some teams and you're like, can you even get the snap off correctly? Can you get lined up and get, you worry about that sometimes. And Tech didn't look like that last week. They went out there and they actually moved the ball, and they, Pop Watson did not look overwhelmed in that game. So I think that's an encouraging sign for Hokies fans that they're down this far in their quarterback depth chart, and they're not just dead in the water offensively. They can actually do some stuff.
And then Quentin Reddish is also a little bit banged up for Virginia Tech.
He didn't play, maybe hamstring. I think I saw that somewhere. He did not play in the last game. I'm not sure. He was out there practice the other day, so we'll see if he's ready for that.
And we were just talking about it a minute ago, but Pry kind of emphasized clearly the Virginia game within Merriman and the building still means a lot to Virginia Tech, and that has been an emphasis this week, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope so. I mean, it's a rivalry game. You got to play it up, and it's not like they're playing for anything else, honestly. I mean, I know it's the bowl eligibility and stuff like that, but, the pride of beating a team that you've beaten, 18 of 19 times?
18 of 19.
Something like that. You want to keep that going. I think it's maybe less so like you have to win this because of the thrill of victory beating this, as much as it's like you have to win this because if you lose to this team, you will never hear the end of it. Yeah. I think that's sort of where Virginia Tech is in this thing. I'm sure that 2019 team still kind of hears about that. All the time, because it's the one time in the last 2 decades where that's happened. So, maybe there's more emphasis on not losing than there is in winning this game.
Some game info on this one. Virginia Tech and Virginia. Winner goes to a bowl game. To your point, winner 6-6. The loser is 5-7. Saturday, 8 p.m. on the ACC network from Lane Stadium in Blacksburg. Currently, it is forecasted to be 29 degrees at kickoff. It would be tied for the 4th lowest temperature kick for a game in Blacksburg in program history. So bundle up, Chris. Bundle up.
I've got to make sure I go through my closet and figure out where all my winter stuff is. I have this bad habit every year of, in the spring, I put away my gloves somewhere, and the first really cold day of like November of the next year, I can't find my gloves.
That is not unique.
So
to
you buy a new pair and then you have
no, I don't buy a new pair. I just go cold for a couple of days and then I eventually find them. But the good news, I have found my gloves this year because it was pretty chilly recently. So I think I'm set.
Do you guys have any crazy tailgate plans? Will, do you for this weekend, considering it's going to be crazy cold?
No, we're going to do our usual tailgate. I got a question for you. Do you have the list of games that were colder? I mean,
yes, I do.
They're in the game notes this week.
1981 VMI game. All the old guys always talk about that one.
Cincinnati game in what was it?
1987.
And that was like a 1 p.m. game too, so it was really cold.
Well, there were like 10,000 people there and snow in the stands and everything. Very cool.
I don't think it's ever snowed.
Yeah,
at a Virginia, a down and out blizzard.
It flurried at the 2002 UVA game when I was a student.
Yeah, but there's never been standing snow on the field. That'd be fun.
The 96,
That'd be fun if that would ever happen.
The 1996 game against ECU had some snow on the ground.
What game had a lot of snow this weekend? Oh, JMU App State because of the snowball thing.
All right, so anyway, you got the...
1987 Cincinnati, 2014 UVA, 2012 UVA, and this would be tied with 2008 Duke. That list is courtesy of Damian
2008
Salas.
Duke was horrible.
So those records probably only go back to 1987 when Damian Salas.
Correct.
Yeah. So because I can assuming that quote unquote old guys even watch the podcast on YouTube, there will be some comments about how cold that 1981 VMI game was.
That Cincinnati game was 25 degrees at kickoff. Hopefully it does not get to that point. Virginia Tech is favored by 7. The line, for the most part, has not budged. And to your point, the Hokies are looking to win their 19th in 20 tries against the Cavaliers. Chris, it has been utter domination in this series.
It has. A lot of reasons for that. You know, there was a long period of time where Virginia Tech was better coached than UVA and where they out-talented UVA. And clearly they've had the mental edge on UVA. I think once you get us to a certain point, you start losing to your rival year after year after year. It gets in your head. And we've seen some recent games in this series, like in the last dozen years, where it comes down to the last game of the season and you have to win it to make a bowl. And Virginia Tech has had some help in a few of those games. You had Mike London clock management in 2012. You had Bryce Perkins fumble in 2018. You had throw it to the offensive tackle in 2021. So as much as Virginia Tech has done a lot of good things in this rivalry game, recently some of those games has been just as much about UVA kind of screwing up at the end. So ideally in this game, you come out here and, you know, you put your foot on the gas and you take that part out of the equation, because at some point UVA will not screw it up, right? They will you know, not make those mistakes down the stretch. So get up by double digits and you know, keep your foot on their throat, so to speak.
Well, there were some of those years where, you know, for a long stretch there, UVA was a heavy underdog in the game. There were some years where they were even favored, and somehow they would manage to not win it. I think the
2018 they were better.
Yeah, 2014?
Mm-hmm.
That game where I think Brewer hit Bucky Hodges deep on a pass. I'm pretty sure UVA was favored in that game, or at least it was close. And that was one of those games where I think a lot of people like the. I think the streak ends this year, and you know, every time we pick that, the streak would never end.
I have a funny story
season
about that game. So where my season tickets were that year, the Tech fan next to me was one of those awful fans where just miserable to be around all the time.
Define awful.
By halfway through the season.
Twitter. Is that a good way to describe it?
Great point.
Halfway through the season, every other sentence that came out of his mouth was Quincy Patterson should be the starting quarterback.
Yes, I understand what you mean.
You know, just awful.
Backup quarterback syndrome there.
He sold his tickets for the UVA game, I guess, to UVA fans, because two UVA fans were sitting there for that game. And so we're talking before the game, and one of the UVA fans, he was pretty hammered, to be quite honest with you. But he's like, congratulations on another victory over UVA. This was before the game started. And I'm convinced that UVA is going to win the game. So I'm like, no, this is the year. Y'all are going to beat us.
He's trying to reverse jinx here.
It was a Virginia Tech and UVA fan trying to explain to each other why the other team is going to win, right? And Tech went up 14-0, like on that block punt right before halftime. And he just couldn't take it anymore. Like, he was so frustrated. And he just left, and his other friend stayed behind, and was like, "Yeah, he's probably going to the car because he gets so frustrated and
he just
it
can't
hurts
do
him
it
so bad he can't do it anymore."
That's crazy. Who was UVA's quarterback that year? Grayson. I'm blanking on the last name. Went to Georgia.
Yeah,
I believe.
Well, no,
No, that was 2 years
2018
later.
was Perkins.
I'm talking 14.
14. Was it Grayson Lambert?
Lambert. That's right. Daddy Nicholas knocked him out of the game. I remember. Matt
they
Johns.
took some big shots at the end. Like Daddy and Kenna Canum were just bearing down on those guys at the end. I remember one of them got just absolutely drilled on the sideline. But I mean, that game, it was interesting. And then went back and forth at the end there, and Tech pulled it out with the deep touchdown pass late. But I think I'm pretty sure that Virginia was favored in that game. Or it was close to a pick 'em, something like that.
So we're talking about the 2014 game?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It took me a while, but I finally found our game preview. UVA was favored by 1 point. Chris picked UVA to win 17-10. I picked Virginia Tech to win 13-10.
Tech had just gotten shut out the week before by Wake Forest.
Yeah.
In regulation,
So I picked him to score 10 points.
The 6-3 game.
UVA scored a touchdown with 2:55 left to take the lead, and then Tech came back less than a minute later with the Bucky Hodges touchdown. Then they sort of released the hounds on the quarterback and just kind of beat him up on that last drive.
And that was after they popped Michael Brewer's throwing shoulder back into place on the sideline because he had dislocated it earlier in the game.
That's crazy.
Gamey performance.
Warrior.
Yep.
You know, we talked about it on Monday, but this game coming into the season, you worded it so well. It was supposed to be a celebration for Virginia Tech. The Hokies were supposed to be 8-3, 9-2. UVA was not supposed to be, regardless of how you feel about them as a team, they weren't supposed to be really sniffing a bowl game at this point in the season, or at least maybe be where they are. This was supposed to be pretty crazily one-sided.
Sure.
All of a sudden, both teams are 5-6. Again, the winner goes to a bowl game. It just is a total reversal of what we thought we were going to see this year.
Yeah, you know, UVA started 4-1. They're now 5-6. And, you know, they did upset Pitt, and Pitt's got some quarterback issues of their own up there now. But, you know, this is a senior-laden UVA team, just like Virginia Tech. So you got to kind of wonder what's going to happen to Virginia next year. I imagine they don't have a ton of NIL money to spend in the portal or things like that. But, you know, if I'm a Virginia fan, I'm sitting here thinking with, let's see, let me count their seniors in their starting lineup. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on defense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on offense. Whew. Seniors or graduate students, you know, so they've got a really experienced team. So if you're a Virginia fan, you're probably thinking we need to do it this year because we're kind of rebuilding from scratch next season. From Virginia Tech's perspective,
is that as big of a concern in the transfer portal era, though?
It's probably, well, it depends. I think like both teams are going to have to rebuild after this year, and you know we don't know what teams' NIL budgets are for sure, but I would bet my house that Virginia Tech's is a lot higher than UVA.
I was going to say, is UVA equipped?
In theory, it will be easier for Virginia Tech to rebuild its roster than UVA. I agree, it's not as big a deal as it used to be.
Sure.
In theory, it was easy for Florida State to rebuild its roster.
That's true.
Very true.
So that segues nicely into I'm looking at the preseason predictions for the ACC. UVA was picked 16th out of 17 teams.
Yeah.
Ahead of only Stanford, and Stanford has pretty much played in Florida State, as you know, was picked number 1 with 81 first place votes out of what looks like about 150 votes.
That's the greatest failure of like collective voting
it's a shame
in history.
It's a shame that like Cal lost to them.
Yeah, it really is.
Can you imagine if they went winless?
The indignity
in the
of having their lone victory against Charleston Southern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine there's ever been a team picked in any league to win the league and then to finish last. I mean, like, that's almost impossible to look at.
I'm sure it's happened somewhere along the line.
But not in a while.
Forever's a long time.
Yeah. Forever's a long time, but that'd probably be a good question for David Teal if he.
Well, I mean, I'll say this: it certainly has never happened in a 17-team league before. Like the difference between we picked them first and had a lot of injuries, and they finished like 6th or something like that in last place. Like that's one thing. To be picked first and finish 17th, that's amazing.
And to be out of it within the first 2 weeks of the season after the BC game on Labor Day, you're like, well.
So
there's that.
Things could be worse, UVA and Tech fans. That's how much worse
it could be.
And for those who don't follow this closely, Florida State is locked up last place. They're 1-7.
Yep.
That's it. They're done. Everybody else has 2 wins or more.
And Florida is going to steamroll them this weekend.
Billy Napier is going to look like Coach of the Year after they get done with Florida State. This week.
He's done a nice job.
I think we're a little bit off topic.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's totally my fault. Looking at the Cavaliers, 3rd year under Tony Elliott, I think UVA finally has started to see some progress under him. Obviously, a murky first 2 years. The first one, obviously, very unfortunate circumstances how it ended, but feels like he's finally started to get them in the right direction.
Yeah. I guess they're a little bit better this year. I think they won 3 games in his first year, and was it 4 last year?
Yes, 4, I'm sorry.
3, 4, 5. So, yeah, technically they are going in the right direction. I think they're a little more physical on defense this year up front and at linebacker. Their secondary's still a mess. Their offensive line's still a mess. But, you know, ultimately 5 wins is an improvement. But at the same time, it's tough to compare year-over-year results these days because the schedules are so unbalanced. It's not like you're playing the same conference schedule every year like it used to be back in the day. It's completely different these days.
It was such an encouraging start for UVA that I think everybody's like, all right, maybe they are turning a corner. But like you said, the schedule kind of changed. And then you look at this second half of the season, 17-point loss to Clemson, 27-point loss to North Carolina, beat Pitt. Like we mentioned, Pitt's kind of in a tailspin right now without its quarterback. lose to Notre Dame by 21, lose to SMU by 26. Now, those are tougher teams, but they're also losing by like 20 points every game. So I think that's why UVA fans are like, it felt like this was a turning point season and maybe for a while there, and then all of a sudden kind of reverted to what it was before. I mean, they can change that by winning this week and get into a bowl game. I think you would look at the season a lot more favorably after that. But if they lose this one and finish, losing 6 of 7, missing out on a bowl game again, I think they'll be looking at that going, man, is Tony Elliott the guy? Is he the guy to get this thing turned around? Because there was always, when Bronco got there, I mean, he took over a mess and he stripped that thing to its studs, and then he just, slowly built it up over time. But it was incremental progress every single year for a while there.
Yeah,
it was improved wins, and all of a sudden they're playing in the Orange Bowl and they win the Coastal. Have not seen that kind of progress under Elliott.
No, you have not. And some of those recent games, actually, even the blowouts haven't been as close as the final score indicated. Like Notre Dame, they bring in Tony Muskett at the end, and he throws 2 touchdown passes against the backup Notre Dame defense.
Yeah.
And he had some success at the end of the game against Clemson as well, which led to some We Want Muskett chants towards the end of their game against SMU this past week. And I guess that's
and he didn't even play.
He didn't play it down.
Didn't play a single snap.
Right. They had basically elevated him to a tie kind of on the depth chart, and they were splitting first team reps between him and Calandria the previous week. So you're thinking maybe you're going to see both of them. Then he didn't play it down. It was very strange.
They should play him just for the name.
Oh, it's a great quarterback.
Fire
name.
the musket. Here we go.
Do you remember the Liberty quarterback, Buckshot Calvert?
Yeah,
that was
that's
also a great quarterback name.
Well, just kind of breaking down their year even further, to your point, Andy, wins over Richmond, a comeback win over Wake, and they were fortunate to win that game. I did watch that game. One at Coastal, BC, their signature win was against Pitt, and to your point, the Panthers have just totally collapsed since then. On the flip side, they dropped games to Maryland, Louisville, Clemson, got smoked by North Carolina. That is a totally different conversation. And then to your point, Notre Dame, SMU, they lost by a combined 27 points. I was going to ask you how you all, as an outsider, would evaluate UVA's season. I think Andy answered that perfectly. They win this weekend. There's a lot to look forward to. If they lose, you're 5-7, you've lost 5 of your last 6, and all of a sudden you're saying, is he the guy? So I think you nailed that point. Let's break down UVA offensively. The big question, are they playing the right quarterback? Tony Muskett, Anthony Calandria. Calandria has been their guy the whole year, but he has struggled quite a bit as of late.
Calandria he's not afraid, and he's tough. And you've got to be those things behind their offensive line, which is an absolute mess. They're the worst team in Power 4 football in terms of sacks allowed. Just awful.
I did a double take looking at the stats. They gave up 10 against North Carolina, 9 against SMU.
And remember, Carolina gave up 70 to JMU. Right? It's not like Carolina's defense is like the 86 Bears, right?
Well, Tech got sacked 7 times last week, and I think that was just like a failure of
third-string
the whole
quarterback.
just the whole scheme and choosing to protect and stuff like that. And 7 was a lot. They adjusted. It used to be 8, now it's 7. But 10 is like, holy cow. North Carolina, not like you mentioned, not the 85 Bears defense there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's... I don't know if they have the right quarterback or not. My take on Calandria has generally been he's most likely to win them a game, but he's also most likely to lose them a game. He's kind of a risk-taking quarterback.
That's a scared money, don't make money.
Exactly.
It is, yeah.
Exactly. I do think he's got some talent and he can run. I feel like Muskett is a guy who's just a little more steady Eddie.
Okay.
And I think everybody thinks, if their starting quarterback is struggling, of course, that the backup is better, especially when the backup comes in garbage time situation and throws a couple of touchdown passes like Muskett did a couple weeks ago against Notre Dame, I believe it was. So I don't know if they're playing the right guy or not. I think there are deeper issues on their football team than who is their quarterback, and it starts up front on the offensive line where they're not very good.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Remind me, what was the comment he made last year? Something along the lines of when we beat Virginia Tech.
When we beat Virginia Tech, the whole nation's going to take notice. I first of all, no, the whole nation is not going to take notice.
Virginia Tech is 5-6.
Beat a 5-6 Virginia Tech team at that point.
Exactly. It was 5-6 Virginia Tech versus 4-7 UVA going into that.
That's right.
game. I don't think the whole nation.
The whole nation was collectively asleep whenever that game was taking place.
Yes, and it was 31-0 at halftime.
And I think
24-0.
the final score was 55-17.
It was.
He got sacked 6 times, and it could have been a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll be hearing him say very much this year.
Probably not. Calandria so far this year, 198 of 320 in the air. That's 62%, over 2,100 yards, just 13 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. He can run too, but because that protection is not so good, to put it bluntly, he's averaging just 2.2 yards a carry. But he is a threat on the ground.
He absolutely is a threat on the ground. He's very savvy. I think that's probably the thing that concerns me the most in this game is his scrambling ability and him being able to keep drives alive. It's 3rd and 6, and you've got him in a pretty good down and distance situation, and all of a sudden he escapes and picks up 7 yards or something like that. That's probably the most concerning thing to me because, as we'll talk about later, they've got a couple key injuries at one of their most important positions, and they've only got 2 reliable receivers, one of which is a tight end.
He seems to be sort of in that vein of like, screw it, somebody's open down there. Like, I'm gonna chuck this thing deep. And, not exactly a strength for the Hokies this year is defending deep passes. I mean, look at the Duke game, 86, 77, 58. I mean, they gave up some big plays in that. So, you're not going to complete those passes unless you give it a try. And Calandria is the guy to give it a try. He's not going to be, pushed off trying to attempt those deep balls. And you hit on a couple of them, and hey, that could be a pretty good offensive game plan.
And to be clear, Tony Elliott said after the loss to SMU, they would continue to evaluate the quarterback position. It's probably going to be Anthony Calandria this week. And I can't imagine they're going to go to their backup for the final game of the year.
I mean, I wouldn't think so. I mean, Calandria is a true sophomore. Tony Muskett is a senior. So if you make that change right now for one football game, if you win it, great. You make a bowl game, you get to laugh at Virginia Tech, right? But if you don't win it, which they probably won't, then I think you make that change for one game, and all you do is end up taking off your sophomore quarterback who has the potential to be a 4-year starter for you. So I just don't think it makes a lot of sense for them to make that change. But if they were gonna make it, wouldn't they have made it already?
Yeah, probably so.
Maybe. And, it's not like this offense has been rolling in recent weeks, and like it's the old Herm Edwards thing. You play to win the game. Like, you go out there, like all these people are always, we got to worry about the future down the line, stuff like that. It's like, no, you don't. You got to win the game in front of you. You got to do what you have to do to win that game. You can worry about, it's a long off season. These guys will get plenty of practice before next year. I don't think the difference between like 30 snaps and 15 snaps in one game is going to be like, the light came on for Calandria in that game. Right. All of a sudden he turns into the starter that they know and love in the future. So it wouldn't surprise me if both those guys played in this game.
I was going to say the decision to go to Calandria in the preseason was made off of allegedly, again, you're preparing for the future, but this is a huge game for UVA. So, like, ditch the future for this weekend and go with your best guy. I don't pretend to speak for UVA fans because I don't truly know how they feel, but I bet winning this game, if you ask them why would you rather beat Virginia Tech? To laugh at Virginia Tech and keep them out of a bowl game, or to go to a bowl game ourselves? They would say to beat Virginia Tech and make sure they don't go to a bowl game, and we get to spend the whole offseason laughing at them. Yeah.
What if it's the Gasparilla Bowl?
Well, see, I would prefer the Gasparilla Bowl. It's before Christmas. Get it out of the way.
I have scheduling reasons for wishing that it's not involving a poker game.
Oh, as opposed to the Fenway Bowl, you're saying? You'd rather go to Tampa?
Yeah. So, it's like, well, yeah.
I would too. Fenway Park in December does not sound fun.
No, it doesn't.
But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Did you know the Gasparilla Bowl is named after a pirate?
Really?
Yeah, that's what a Gasparilla is. It was a pirate in the 19th century, which actually did not exist. It's like a Florida legend, but this guy never existed.
See, I know it's not sarsaparilla, but I always think of root beer when I hear the word Gasparilla.
Yeah. They got a pirate.
They have a big pirate festival down there. They get like a Gasparilla.
Well, yeah, they played it at the Buccaneers Stadium, so they got the big pirate ship.
Yep,
that's a great stadium to go watch a game. I covered an Outback Bowl there, which was a great bowl game to cover because they bring a bloomin' onion to you at the press row.
Nice.
Like not individual, but like sharing with the person next to you. So it's like, that was the best bowl game to cover.
Well, can the Hokies get to Tampa? We'll find out. First, they got to beat UVA. And again, we're talking about the Cavaliers offensively. Malachi Fields is the big receiver from Charlottesville. He's been a huge weapon all year. 53 catches, 788 yards, and 5 touchdowns. he could be a problem for Virginia Tech.
Very good player, big guy, 6'4" on the outside. He can be a possession receiver, but he can also be a threat down the field.
Yep.
But he's probably, I would consider him their only consistent wide receiver. Their second leading receiver is Neville, their tight end, and I think he's a good player. He's a transfer from, I believe, Harvard.
Believe that's right. He's from Lafayette.
He's
in
from
Williamsburg.
Lafayette and Williamsburg.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are their top two guys. Their starting slot receiver is Chris Tyree, the transfer from Notre Dame. He averages 5.5 yards a catch.
He seems kind of ill-suited for receiver. He started as a running back. That's where he was recruited. Right. It's like I haven't watched enough UVA to go like, oh, he's in the wrong spot. Right. But it's just always felt
5.5 yards a catch.
Yeah, that feels like a tough transition.
That's got to be the lowest average yards per catch of any starting receiver in the whole country, if I had to guess. 5.5 yards per catch. Sometimes you see like a slot receiver average like 8.9 or something like that, but 5.5, that's not good. Andre Green's their other wide receiver. He was a 4-star guy who went to UNC and then transferred to UVA, but he hasn't been all that productive for them either. But again, their pass protection issues has been so bad that these guys don't have as much of a chance to be productive as maybe some wide receivers at other schools, of course.
Chris Tyree was on that Notre Dame team that came here in 2021, I want to say.
I guess he probably
He's from Thomas Dale.
I think that's right.
Richmond?
Sounds right.
Gotcha. Looking at the Cavaliers even more, they're banged up. You look at the running back room. We talk about Virginia Tech and the quarterbacks, understandably so, but Xavier Brown, their top guy, he's out for the year, suffered a season-ending injury last week in the loss to SMU, and then Kobe Pace, who is a Clemson transfer, he's their number 2 guy. You wrote in the preview, I believe you said you think that he's probably their best guy.
Well, I think Brown he's been their best running back. Well, yards per carry Brown has 6.1 for him, 4.4 for Pace. Pace is their starter. 114 carries to 80 carries. But they're both in there a lot. And we know Brown is not going to be playing with a collarbone injury. So he's been their most explosive back. Pace also left that game, I believe, with a knee injury. We don't know what his status is. It's possible they'll be without their top 2 running backs. And these two guys have been pretty solid for UVA this year. Haven't put up huge numbers, but they are physical runners, and you got to understand they get blown out so much that the running game is off the table in the second half. These guys would have better numbers, and again, their offensive line isn't great. Individually, I think they're pretty good backs, and for one of them or possibly even both of them to not be available in this game is a pretty big blow, because that just puts more pressure on whoever's going to be playing quarterback for UVA.
Right.
And maybe you have to throw it more behind that offensive line that can't pass block. So it's a pretty significant loss if both those guys are out.
Well, that's been part of UVA's problem for a while, is an inability to run the ball. Like even when they were like really good, a lot of it was throwing the ball, the success that they had. So I think that's part of what Tony Elliott has tried to do since coming in there, is bring a little more balance to the offense. And it's tough to do that when all your guys are getting hurt at the top of the line there. So that'll be a challenge.
Do you guys think with the weather, this is going to be a run-heavy game?
It seems like it should be. I can't think of many passing games they're going to go out there and be operating at 100% efficiency when it's going to be 29 degrees at kickoff is what they're saying, and probably 25 or 24.
It's going to be windy though.
It's not going to be windy.
You can throw the ball in the cold.
Yeah,
it's when it really gets windy that's when it affects.
Yeah, it's not going to be windy. That's true. But still, when one team's probably going to be starting its third string quarterback and the other has quarterback and pass blocking issues, I think both teams would rather go into this game and say, yeah, we're going to run the football, and I think that's what Virginia Tech will do. I don't know if UVA will have that option. They've only used 2 tailbacks really this year, so I just think Virginia Tech is better situated going into this game. Even starting a third string quarterback, I think there are matchup advantages for the Hokies.
Okay, I was going to say, you guys obviously seem to like the matchup for Virginia Tech's defense against UVA. That's
absolutely
correct.
I mean, there's no excuse for Virginia Tech's defense not playing well this week. I mean, you're going up against a team that may or may not have a quarterback controversy. They can't protect the quarterback at all, and they're missing 1 and maybe 2 of their top 2 running backs, and their wide receiver group outside of Fields is mediocre at best. It's just not an offense that puts a lot of pressure on you. So I don't feel like this is a game where Virginia Tech should go out there and play a bad game like they have sometimes in recent weeks.
Well, Virginia Tech has the ACC sack leader, and UVA has given up 31 sacks in the last 5 games. So, I mean, the opportunity is going to be there. And, you know, Virginia Tech come off a game where they didn't have any sacks against Duke. That hasn't happened since last year. Against BC, oddly, they had no sacks in that game, and Rutgers. Those are the two games they didn't have a sack. So I think that defensive line is going to be chomping at the bit to get out there. And, I mean, there's going to be opportunities. I mean, 10 sacks by UNC. I still can't get over that.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing. Like SMU is a pretty good defense, and they're going to go play in the ACC championship game. I mean, North Carolina gave up 70 points to JMU.
50.5.
They just fired their coach. Like,
I was going to say.
It wasn't even like they were on a great run or something like that at the time. Like, that is not a defense that gets after the quarterback, and they just, you know, completely collapsed on him in that game.
By the way, 60-second tangent. That situation in Chapel Hill is a little bizarre because, like, Mac Brown's been the guy there and everything, and clearly they gave him the option to retire, and eventually got to the point where they said, hey, we got to move forward without you.
Great decision. Nobody else is changing coaches this year.
Yep.
I mean, there's going to be very limited movement.
It's the only Power Four that's open
right now. And a lot of teams are worried about what their finances are going to be when they have to start revenue sharing next year. UNC, I'm guessing, you know, has some help from their big donors paying this off, but they're going to be in the market and they're not going to have any competition. Meanwhile, watch next year. More teams will fire their coaches next year, so whoever's in the market for a head coach next year is going to face a lot more competition.
They're not going to be the only vacancy.
They're going to be the only one.
There's always a surprise. There's always an NFL defection or something like that.
But it's not going to be as many, though.
So Deion Sanders to UNC is what I'm hearing. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, prime time in Chapel Hill with the Jordan brand.
Oh my!
How do you guys view the Carolina job, real fast?
I think it's a good job.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's an elite job, but it's in the you can win games in the ACC, man.
Do they really have? Well, they have it. Are they really committed to investing what is required to win in football, though?
I mean, it's the ACC.
Who knows with any
they're
team?
Not a good. They gave up 70 to JMU. They're still going to a bowl. That's how completely mediocre the ACC is. You can come into Carolina and win a lot of games if you're a good coach.
You could.
It just never seems to be put together. I mean, they've had two. Like, when did Sam Howell go in the draft? He wasn't first round. There was talk of him.
Fifth round.
There was talk of him being a first round pick at one time. Drake May went third, second or third in last year's draft. I mean, they've had standout quarterbacks there under Mac Brown, and they still have just never quite gotten over that hump to be the team that you thought they could be there. So if they can't do it with that. And, you know, I'm not saying that they don't have resources. And that stadium's, I enjoy that stadium when I go down there. Beautiful campus and all sorts of other things you can recruit to down there. For some reason, they just haven't been able to put it together.
Defense.
And I like, if they don't do it under Mac Brown and he's the guy that rallies the troops and recruits really well, like, I don't know, is there another approach to get it done? I don't know. Like, they haven't won an ACC title since, what, 81,
1980,
82?
I think.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
They're so focused on recruiting and star rankings and things like this. And I've always heard this from people. I've heard this from someone who coached under Mac Brown. It's just like, you're so focused on recruiting that once you sign the guy and you get him in the program, you're always you're trying to replace him, just like that. I just think some coaches are recruit focused and some coaches are coaching focused, and he's a recruiting focused. And I just, I thought Fuente's staff in that 2021 game, like, they completely outcoached the UNC staff.
Well, now, interesting. Talking to that previous staff, they're like, we've got a chance in this. That was a very talented UNC team. It's like, we got a chance because they don't really practice. They don't really do anything. They're a talent-based team. And when they practice during the season, they get better over the course of the season. That talent develops, and you catch them at the end of the year, it might be tougher. But you catch them in that first game after a full off season where they're not doing as much, it sounds like. That's an opportunity to go in there and out-scheme them, out-coach them, and they did. I mean, that was sort of, you know, people like to dump on Fuente, although it's kind of gotten his name has been restored a little bit, seeing how this current staff has struggled. But you gave them an off season to go into that opener, and they typically looked very good in that game. They typically look pretty good going into a bowl game, the game plan at least, maybe not the execution of the game plan. After having a month going into that thing, that they put together a good game plan, they just couldn't always execute it.
Yeah, I just don't think UNC. I don't think they're tough enough, and I think the toughness starts at the head coach.
The support base could be better too.
It could
for
be.
football.
It could
for football.
be, but so could Duke's, and Duke's is 8-3, right?
100%.
Does the UNC's color scheme play into the fact that they're not as tough? Like, can you be as tough when you have Argyle on your pants?
Their 97 team would
okay, that's true. Yeah,
That was a Mac Brown team.
Yeah, it was
a Mac Brown team.
That was when he was young, though.
True. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. As our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company's support has been invaluable to TSL, helping us to bring you all the great content across all of our platforms. They offer a variety of checking and savings account options that are sure to meet your banking needs, including free checking. Visit firstbank.com to find the account that's right for you. Let's check in with Will in the fourth chair.
We've got stat time with Scott Glesner. So, when Virginia Tech allows UVA to score 30 or more points, the Hokies are 1-17 against the Cavaliers. I'm not saying that's going to happen this weekend. It's just a stat. The only win was, does anybody know it right off the top of their head? It was recent.
Points. I'm blanking on it.
Was it 2018?
2018. He got it in just under the wire.
Virginia, that was a wild one.
Yeah, Virginia
It took
Tech,
overtime.
That
to
was
get
overtime, yeah.
Yep, Virginia Tech won 34-31 in overtime. And that was the game where the UVA quarterback fumbled on the last play of the game.
Ty Garbett recovered it.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, that's right.
The flip side of that.
Was it Garbett? I thought it was Belmar.
Yeah, I think it was Belmar.
Manuel Belmar.
Belmar got up and spiked it into the ground.
I think that was also the game. Wasn't that the famed Reggie Floyd picture?
Yes.
Is that
Yes,
game
yes.
that's outside?
Very nice. For sale in the Tech Sideline poster store. The flip side of that stat is that the Virginia Tech has won the last 25 times they've held UVA under 30 points. I imagine if you examine, any rivalry that you're going to have similar stats for 30 points.
You see, the key is just don't let them score 30 points, guys. Come on. It's like, football's so simple. Come on.
Now, the last time Virginia Tech lost holding UVA under 30 points was in 1988. The Hokies lost 16-10. Virginia Tech has scored in 19 straight quarters against UVA.
Okay.
Plus one overtime period in that same streak, which I guess would be 2018. The last time Virginia Tech did not score in a quarter was the first quarter in 2018.
Remember the last streak we talked about scoring in a quarter was the Clemson?
Yeah.
And then they didn't.
Shut out in the first half.
First half. That's right.
Yeah. Clemson had scored in like 25 straight quarters against Virginia Tech, and then Tech shut them down for 2 quarters. Virginia Tech has, wait a minute, that's not the one I want to know. On record, I found this interesting. UVA has had 6 300-yard passing games against Virginia Tech, or 300-yard passers. 6 of them. Trivia question for you guys, and this goes fairly far back. I'll give you a hint, it goes further back than Andy. Who is the only UVA quarterback to pass for 300 yards twice against Virginia Tech?
The Magic Man? Don Mikowski?
No.
What?
And as a matter of fact, Mikowski never passed for 300 yards
kidding.
against Virginia Tech.
I'd probably say Aaron Brooks, maybe.
Aaron Brooks.
Wow.
Ding,
Aaron
ding,
Brooks.
ding.
Yeah, 97 and 98.
97 and 98, yeah. So the list is Matt Blunden, which I guess was the 1990 game, even though UVA got smoked in that game. Aaron Brooks twice, Matt Schaub, Perkins, and Brennan Armstrong have all passed for 300 yards. Virginia Tech has only had 1 300-yard passer against UVA.
Again, my goodness.
It was recent.
Was it Willis in that game?
No. In 2019, in the loss,
Hooker.
Hendon Hooker.
Hendon Hooker threw for 311 yards.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
Before he was like known as, he obviously
Hendon
threw
Hooker.
the ball very well at Tennessee, but that year it was very much, they had to put him in right situations.
Yeah.
And that's why at the end when they're like, okay, go down the field in 1 minute to try to win this game, that they ended up fumbling in the end zone and the game was over at that point.
Virginia Tech has run the ball 30 or more times in the last 27 games against UVA. The last time the Hokies did not run the ball 30 times, they ran it 29 times in the 1995 comeback win, 36-29 at UVA. Let's see. Well, next to last stat, UVA's had a 100-yard receiver in 4 of the last 5 contests versus Virginia Tech. And certainly Malachi Fields could be the guy in this one. And this is obscure, and I'm not even sure it's all that interesting. Andy, you may remember this. When researching the first game ever between Virginia Tech and UVA in 1895, has had a score discrepancy. It's shown as a 38-0 UVA win. It is shown in several newspapers as a 36-0 UVA win. One even states 18 points in the first half, 18 points in the second half. The Bugle, the Virginia Tech yearbook, has it as 36-0, while the Corks and Curls has it as 38-0.
That's important.
That is really important.
Sounds like the Courts and Curls is up to no good.
Well, people argue about that to this day. All the time on the Tech Sideline message boards.
1895.
It must have been the spread,
Yeah, it must have been a 37-point spread, and somebody fixed it at the end.
Yeah.
It can't happen. It can't happen. Virginia defensively, let's move it along here. Looking at the Cavaliers, this is a group that is still probably not where they want to be, but it is improved compared to last
They're
year.
more physical up front. I think, Cam Butler's been a pretty good player for them. Chico Bennett's made some plays, decent defensive tackles. Cam Robinson, their Mike linebacker, is a guy who was one of the best freshman linebackers in the country last year. And he was a guy that Virginia Tech recruited, and I still regret that they did not sign him because he's a natural inside linebacker that played great for them as a true freshman. Now, he's been banged up this year. He's only played 50 snaps total in their last 2 games, so I think that's injury related. And so again, that's an advantage for Virginia Tech possibly with Bishal Tootin looking like he's getting healthier and healthier. If last week is any judge, is any indication. But where they've really struggled is in the secondary. They are outside the top 100 in pass defense. Do you have my
I do,
preview
yes.
pulled up? So read their pass defensive stats.
They're 125
Okay.
nationally.
They're
125 nationally. Rushing wise, they're at 51. But
Right.
passing defense, they're
right.
125.
And what's their yards per attempt? Oh well, this
yards per attempt? Yards per play is 95.
And well, I should.
Yards per attempt is 100. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 100th in the country. Yeah, so they give up big plays. They give up a lot of passing yards. So their secondary, they seem to have issues with sort of like Virginia Tech zone coverage, passing off, receivers as they go through the zone. Kempton Shine has been an outstanding cornerback for them. There's only one corner in the ACC that is allowing a lower completion percentage than Shine, which, by the way, Kempton Shine's
That's a good name.
That's a
I
good
like
name.
that.
Yeah, good cornerback name.
Certainly a
especially, I
bright
think.
spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a graduate student. He's a veteran player. You got Sanker at safety, who's been a good player for him. Their issue is more teamwork related, I think, in the secondary. How much Virginia Tech can exploit that with a third string quarterback, I don't know.
I think the opportunities will be there because again, I look at how Pop Watson threw the ball last week, and I thought he threw it well. I thought he put in some spots, and he telegraphed that interception to the point that I think 2 Duke guys could have picked off that pass. But maybe that's just don't be predictable with the play call. It seemed like every 4th and short, they're like, let's run a little quick screen out to the wide behind some blockers, and it didn't work.
Plus, Duke forces a lot of turnovers.
Yeah,
to
that's
their
true.
front.
That's true. But I do think the opportunity will be there. Exactly. Again, I don't think you get to this. A lot of teams get the third string quarterback, and you're like, man, just hand the ball off. Be lucky to do that. I don't think Tech's in that situation. I think they can throw the ball, and obviously they have the receivers to get down there and get open if somebody can deliver it to them.
I'll be interested to see if UVA plays a lot of man in this game. This is a small sample size, 1 game, of course, but Watson kind of seemed like the opposite of Drones. So, like Drones throws well against man-to-man, but struggles to go through his reads against zone coverage. Watson completed a bunch of his passes against zone coverage, where he sat back there and went through his reads. It was when Duke started playing more man that he felt like, I think he started holding the ball too long. Like, can I make this throw into a tighter window against man coverage? And he just didn't seem to recognize things as well. So he was like the opposite of Drones. So I would wonder if UVA would come out in this game and play more man coverage, considering he had a little bit more success, I think, against zone last week.
And again, I want to emphasize again, an advantage for Virginia Tech is UVA as a whole defensively is also pretty banged up. And you were talking about that with Cam Robinson up front and also a couple other areas, too. They're having some injury
I mean,
issues.
Shine only played 38 snaps in their last game. So was he injured, too? He normally plays 60 or 70 snaps a game. Generally, he hardly ever comes off the field. So, yeah, I mean, both teams are dealing with some injury issues right now.
A positive, too, as well. If Pop Watson is the quarterback, UVA is 106th nationally in sacks. So he should not be
They don't
under as much duress.
You're right. This isn't a defense that stresses you. They're solid against the run. Okay, above average. Really bad against the pass. They're terrible on third downs. They're outside the top 100 in sacks. They're outside the top 100 in tackles for loss. So they don't play in the backfield They don't cover the pass, and they just you're not under a whole lot of stress when you face them, as opposed to the stress you're under when you're playing Duke, which forces a ton of turnovers and plays in the backfield a lot and has a very, very good secondary and is pretty good against the run too. So it's just a big difference, just statistically at least, in the type of defense Virginia Tech's going to be facing this week.
Looking at UVA on the special team side of things, as we kind of flip to that side of the ball, they are pretty solid in kick coverage. Opponents are averaging, reading your preview, just under 14 yards on kick returns, which is number 4 nationally, which is actually the exact opposite of what Tech faced last weekend.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot's going to happen on special teams this week.
Yeah.
UVA's doesn't return it for very much yardage, but they're good. They're very good in coverage. Their field goal kicker is good. I think he's 15 of 17.
17 of 20 on the year,
17 of 20.
15 of 16 from inside 40 yards.
Okay, yeah, so he's solid. It's just so if there is a big play on special teams to decide it, you're just not exactly sure where it comes from because neither team, like UVA, hasn't allowed those types of plays this year, but they don't make a lot of plays either.
Is there anything Virginia Tech can do on the special team side of things to kind of incur the advantage? Obviously, again, they're good at the kick coverage side of things, covering punts. But if Jalen Lane can break one, it may be a good opportunity for the Hokies to kind of get a step up in this one on Saturday.
Did he break one against UVA last year?
No, he had a long touchdown reception that got called back.
Yeah.
That's right. Tech had so many big plays in that game, I have trouble remembering
keep track.
whether they were on special teams or offense.
Well, I mean, Tech looked like it had something on the kickoff last week.
It did. They did.
Then they got called back for a holding penalty. So that was disappointing because they haven't been able to really break one there yet. And that was like, perhaps that was the breakthrough. I think maybe part of it is like, just give your kicker a chance in this game. I mean, there have been some long field goal opportunities that they just haven't even trotted John Love out there for. And some of them were like 60 yards or something like that. But it's like end of half, maybe just give him a shot at it. Rather than trying to throw a Hail Mary and your quarterback's under siege and he gets sacked again. Maybe it's a chance at points. I mean, the 60 yards is a long ways. Maybe not in the NFL where guys seem to be making that all the time. But John Love's he made what was that Miami? It was
57?
57?
53
That's getting pretty
and
close.
57.
And I thought the 57-yarder had room to spare on that one. So,
sure.
That's talking maybe more ideal conditions in Miami with the heat that's going on down there.
The ball's going to be cold.
Yeah, and the ball's going to be like kicking a brick in this game coming up. So maybe keep that in mind. But, those longer ones, maybe it'd be worth trying to kick the field goal rather than going for it.
It's definitely something to monitor in warm-ups. Go out there and see how well he kicks it in pregame in cold weather and keep that in your back pocket if you feel like he's kicking it well.
I was going to ask how much the cold weather could affect that. But, again, they thought about trying the 60-yarder. Well, thought may be a stretch. He wandered 5 yards onto the field, and then they pulled him back. But maybe, we'll see. Could be a long field goal this weekend. So that would be a nice way to cap off the season. Will, I don't know if you have anything in the fourth chair. I may want to check in with you before we get to our analysis and our game picks for the weekend.
So I know that if you're just listening to this or watching it on YouTube, this is going to be a little hard to track, but this is the kind of thing I find interesting. The history of the rivalry. In the first 8 games, they started playing in 1895, and UVA won the first 8 games in complete blowouts. And then in 1905, along came a guy named Hunter Carpenter.
He was in his 8th year of college.
Yes.
He 38 years old at that point.
Hunter played college football. Just you young folks, look him up on Wikipedia. Hunter Carpenter, Virginia Tech. Fascinating.
He's a whole chapter in my book. Go buy my book and you can read about him.
That's right. And he played for he hated UVA so bad, he played for 2 different schools to try to beat him.
Yeah. He went to North Carolina, played for them for a while, came back. And so in 1905, Virginia Tech beat UVA 11-0. And the Hokies got up 11-0, and Carpenter was thrown out for throwing the football into the face of UVA player.
Oh, jeez.
Going out a
Hunter
legend.
Dickinson.
Absolute legend in that
There
point.
should be a statue with this guy on campus.
It should be a statue of him throwing the ball at another player's face. One of those action statues.
So the Hokies finally won a game in 1905, and UVA got mad, and they didn't play again until 1923.
Hunter Carpenter, by the way, 1-7 all time against UVA.
Really?
Was the one.
1-7?
And then he retired from football after that game.
How does that even work, though? He played. You mentioned he played 8 years.
There were no rules.
There were no rules. Come on.
Just like there are no rules now.
That's a fair point.
He was the first transfer portal guy.
And
I mean, he came to Virginia Tech, then transferred to UNC, and then transferred back to Virginia
So
Tech.
as long as you kept on paying for college, you could keep playing essentially.
guess.
also, he had to sign an affidavit before that game because UVA was like accusing of VPI at that point or whatever,
paying him, right?
VAMC of paying him. Like the more things change, the more they stay the same.
You can't do that. You cannot pay players to play. It's
Can't do that.
can't do that. Go ahead, Will. I'm sorry. We hijacked the conversation.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, totally. These things are engendered. They're meant to spur conversation. After they started playing again, and then after 1927, UVA had an 11-3 lead in the series. And then for the next about 25 years or so, it was even. And after 1952, it was 13, 20, and 4. So the Hokies were down 7 in the win column, just down 7. Now, from 1953 to 1977, the Hokies went 16, 5, and 1. And UVA never won 2 games in a row in that stretch, from 53 through 77. Now, after 1977, the series stood in Virginia Tech's favor at 29, 25, and 5. 29, 25, and 5. For the next 2 decades, it was a very even series, and I would say that's the heyday of the series. That's when it was most competitive. From 1978 to 1998, it was basically a 500 situation. And UVA won in Lane Stadium in 1998. That's the last time UVA has won in Lane Stadium. And at that point in time, Virginia Tech led the series 39, 36, and 5. So it was basically an even matchup for the first. We're up to 100 years now. And of course, since then, it's 22-2 for the Hokies, and that brings it to 61, 38, and 5 in Virginia Tech's favor. And I will put forth I'm really stepping out on a ledge here. UVA is never going to catch Tech.
That's a safe
that's
assumption.
probably
There'd have to be
fair.
a drastic shift in the wins of
None of
the
us will be
programs.
around or be alive.
Probably not.
Not even Nick Brown. Or you, Carter.
Nope.
So how many games does Tech up? 22?
23, 61, 38, and 5.
So they would have to, let's see, even if they won the next 23 games, that would put me at 64 years old when they finally caught up to Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen.
The last time we were talking about it before we started recording, last time Virginia Tech played UVA in a packed Lane Stadium. Nick was a junior in high school. He's now engaged. I was a sophomore in high school. I'm a senior at Tech. And last time UVA won in Lane Stadium, my parents weren't even engaged.
Wow.
So I was still 5 years away from emerging. So
I had no kids, and I now have 3 college graduates.
that's crazy.
Since
That's crazy.
the last time UVA won in Lane Stadium.
That's
I
crazy.
didn't have a driver's license. I was 15.
What about you, Andy? What were you
I
up
was
to?
98.
Yes,
Is that
yep.
the college sophomore?
Okay.
What was the name of your column that you wrote?
The bitter end.
The Bitter End.
Yeah.
Oh, in school it was
kinda
Wisconsin.
right.
It was the Bitter End.
Oh yeah, that
That's
was
funny.
easy.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right. We talked about it last week for the Duke preview. I want to ask you guys the same question. Give us 3 keys to the game this weekend. What do the Hokies have to do to knock off UVA?
Continue to put the UVA quarterbacks under pressure. I mean, Virginia Tech did that great. Did a great job of that last year. Obviously, it's been an issue for the Hokies all year, or for the Who's all year, excuse me, because they've given up so many sacks. I think make it easy on Pop Watson to a certain extent, assuming he's the starter, which I agree with Andy. He's probably going to start this game. Get some easy throws early, maybe get him into a groove. Let him use his legs, and don't lose the turnover battle.
Yeah.
Unless the turnover battle is in UVA's favor.
Don't let them score 30 points.
Yeah, right. That seems to be the key recently. Unless UVA has like a substantial edge in turnovers, with their struggles offensively, I don't see them scoring much on Tech. That's just my take.
Okay.
So, those are my 3 keys. Are we giving predictions now too?
We'll
Or wait on
do
predictions?
keys,
Okay.
and then we'll go around and do predictions.
Got to run the dang ball.
Yeah.
We say it every week, but when you have your third string quarterback in the game, make it easier for him. Run the ball, and then throw off of that. You can control the game. This seems like a defense that you can move the ball against. Maybe easier to throw it on than run the ball against. But I mean, if you can run the ball, you can really establish yourself and control the game. So I mean, that's the big one. Get after Calandria, because that's what other teams have done, and they've made life, miserable. I think if you give him a little bit of time back there, he will take the deep shot. And it's not been a great success rate for the Hokies all season long on those kind of plays. So there's a couple keys.
What about you, Will? Any keys to add?
Yeah, Bayshul Tootin.
Okay.
He is the best player on the field. I thought he looked good against Duke. Andy, he said or Price said about him in the press conference the other day that he wasn't 100% in that Duke game, but once he started running, he said he didn't even notice it. And, of course, there was that clip of him reaching 20 or 21 miles an hour on his touchdown. So the speed is there. I don't know about the cutting ability.
Bayshall, he had that quote that kind of went viral. It looks so much cooler in a quote graphic where he said, "I've got time to heal after the season." It's not like he said it like, "I got time to heal after the season." He's just kind of said a matter of factly thing, but it does look very cool in a quote graphic like that.
I think Nick put one together, actually, didn't you?
I'm looking at it right now. That's the reason I bring it up.
Yeah, so, in 2019, Bryce Perkins was the best player on the field because Hendon Hooker wasn't at Tennessee yet. He wasn't Tennessee vintage Hendon Hooker. That's a little jab there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And this time around, Bayshul Tootin's the best player on the field, except maybe for APR. But Bayshul can influence a game more than APR can, I think.
So you guys said you both think Pop Watson will be the starter. Do you see any world? I don't think Kyron Jones is going to go. Do you see any world in which Colin Schlee could be available in an emergency situation?
It's possible. Let's assume he's got a concussion. That's what it seems like.
Okay.
There are certain protocols you have to go through. You can't just say, "Well, what do you think, medical staff? Can he play?" And then they say, "Yeah, sure."
That's how it used to be.
That's how it used to be. There are by rules. Certain protocols you have to reach, certain milestones. When Hunter Couture got a concussion, was it last season or the
yes,
season?
Last
it was
year.
last season. I think he missed 2 games, right? So basically a week.
Because him and Georgia Amore dealt with a concussion within 2 weeks of one another.
She missed 2 games also.
Correct.
Right?
Again, we don't know if he has a concussion.
We don't know it for a fact.
Maybe kind of assuming some things here. But even still, I don't feel like he's going to practice a lot this week.
Yeah.
If you don't practice all week, you're not in there, installing the game plan. And he's a veteran guy and he knows it. But if Pop is in there doing the work and being the front guy with the reps all week, you're probably going to go with him on Saturday.
Pop Watson and Davie Belfort, then? Those are your 2 guys this weekend, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't know that Colin Schlee is going to be available and Pop is the guy doing all the practicing, then you have to design the offense around Pop and then go with Pop.
Yep.
I think that's kind of what you have to do.
All right.
And if whether or not Davie's the backup or not, I think that's dependent on Schlee. But I would start Pop this week just because he's going to get the practice reps all week.
By the way, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this. Malachi Thomas, you guys don't think
he's out?
He's out. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if he's been ruled out, but he wasn't out there practicing again. So I can't imagine he's going to play.
Game picks time. All right, Will, we'll start with you in the 4th chair. Who wins on Saturday between Virginia Tech and Virginia?
Well, first of all, spoiler alert, every staffer picked Virginia Tech to win.
Okay.
So in my case, it goes back to what I just said about Tootin being the best player on the field. And I think I'm assuming Pop's going to be the quarterback. I think the Hokies will lean heavy on the run, and that'll bring Tootin to the forefront. Hopefully he stays healthy and can play the whole game. And since I'm on, let me jump in and say that the fans are already chiming in our game preview. We have 142 votes so far. 45% of the Hokies winning by 11 plus, 34% of the Hokies winning by 1 to 10. So that's 79% of Virginia Tech fans feel the Hokies are going to win. Did I say my score?
No.
Not yet.
27-13 Virginia Tech.
Okay. Hokies win by 2 touchdowns. They also cover as well. Chris, we'll go to you next.
I've got Virginia Tech 31-17.
Okay.
I think the matchups favor the Hokies this one. With this one, especially with Tootin seeming like he's close to 100%. And I like the matchup of Virginia Tech's defense against a UVA offensive line that can't protect the quarterback. So, and when you throw in the fact that neither one of their top 2 running backs are healthy, Brown is definitely out. Pace, we'll see. I just think the matchups favor the Hokies in this one.
What about you, Andy?
I took the Hokies as well. I've been too cute with some of my picks, like, oh, they're going to win by one score. And I'm just like, they're not going to win by one score. It's just not going to happen. It's not in this coaching staff's DNA, it feels like, to win one score games. So I picked it 1 point over a one score, 30-21, just so I'm out of that range.
Okay. By the way, David has Virginia Tech winning 30-16. He's down in Florida with men's basketball right now, so he has the Hokies by 2 touchdowns as well. Nick, what about you?
Let's turn all this on first. I want to highlight that this may not be the most important football game played this weekend for Virginia Tech. 6 o'clock, Virginia Tech at Duke, Elite Eight. I've heard rumblings that they're trying their
That's
best.
women's soccer, by the way.
Women's soccer.
Yes,
Yes,
point
yes,
out
yes.
that
Yes.
the football joke there.
Yes, of course. But I've heard rumblings that they're trying their best during warm-ups to have at least some form of live feed, whether that's stats or something of the soccer game. But it's senior night, of course, also, so you don't want to go in there and interrupt all the processions and stuff of the players coming out of the tunnel. So I know everybody on Twitter's like, they need to play the soccer game on Hokie Vision.
Would it be that hard just to stream it up
It's on
there?
ESPN Plus.
Well,
I don't know
there are
legal
right, there are
reasons.
right
Yeah, it's
stations.
probably something with the
Broadcast
NCAA.
rights.
Right.
It's-
It's
just do it. It's a big
ESPN
TV.
Plus.
Yeah,
It's
what are the
ESPN
rights?
Plus, and Virginia Tech has an ESPN contract. I think you should play it and tell
Just
them to
do
pound
it.
sand.
What are the
What are they going to do? Kick us out of the NCAA?
Yeah,
Well, I'm like, that's
fine
it.
us.
I'm dead serious. Like, it's just like
Just
it's
say
like a
I'm
big
sorry.
open bar, right? Like, what's the difference
Yeah.
between showing this at a bar and showing it in the stadium?
I would think they could do it, but I agree. There could be some like legalization with the
I don't
NCAA
know.
tournament. I mean,
Get Brad
you can't
Worthman
even-
on the phone. Let's find out what's going on.
Exactly, yeah. But you can't even
Pay the
film.
fine.
I don't know. We'll see.
Either way, I got Virginia Tech winning the football game, the actual football game, 34-14. I've just seen enough dumb stuff that even if this does get to a one-score game, I still think the dumb stuff that UVA has done or has happened to UVA in the past outweighs Virginia Tech's dumb stuff in one-score games over the last 3 years. That's just
Fair enough.
ever since UVA had the ball in Virginia Tech territory. I think at like the 25-yard line in 2018, up 4 with like 3 minutes to go. And Virginia Tech still won that game. I've got no faith in the Who's winning a close game.
I think it happens this week. I think Virginia Tech will win a one-possession game.
Ooh. it's
Don't
gotta
go
happen
there.
at
I've
some
tried it too many times to see
I
it.
know,
It just has
I
not
know.
worked.
If it doesn't happen, then, well, we'll try again next year. So, but yeah, Virginia Tech, Virginia coming up this weekend. Buy or sell, we're going to record right after this. I believe we're going to release on Friday because of Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, everybody.
Yeah, you
Hopefully
too.
everybody has some nice plans over the next couple of days. Does anybody have anything fun on Thanksgiving Day? Just hang out with some family and friends?
Food and football. I mean,
I'll
that's-
go home
yeah.
on Thursday morning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
And maybe probably get up way early on Friday to come back and do some work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Hate that Thanksgiving is this week every year.
I know.
Yeah,
Stinks.
absolutely. Hokies, Cavaliers, 8 o'clock on Saturday on the ACC Network from Lane Stadium. For Chris Coleman, Andy Bitter, Will Stewart, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from episode 394 of the Tech Sideline podcast, and we'll talk to you on Friday.